Imagine a haunted house where 6 people lost their lives in a single night. According to the killer, it wasn't him, but the ghosts that made him do it. But when another family moved into the house, they couldn't last more than 28 days. What they witnessed during those 28 days was so horrifying that it would chill you to the bone. So without further delay, let's dive into today's episode. Friends, the true horror stories of Amityville began in 1974, when something so unimaginable happened that it's beyond our wildest thoughts. It's not that there were no strange incidents before 1974, but the terrifying events of that year marked a chilling record. In that year, Ronald DeFeo took the lives of 6 family members in a single night. His parents, siblings, all of them. Now either a person has to be completely deranged to commit such an act, or there has to be some dark, supernatural force controlling them. Otherwise, why would anyone harm their own family for no reason? On the night of November 13th, Ronald made sure that every family member had fallen asleep. He was afraid that if anyone woke up, he wouldn't be able to complete his plan. Once everyone was asleep, he picked up his rifle and one by one shot them all, putting them to eternal sleep. The next day, when the police were informed about the mass murder, they arrived at the scene and began their investigation. At first, Ronald tried to blame an outsider, but the very next day, he confessed to being the killer. He was arrested. But even after all these years, neither the police nor anyone else has been able to uncover the full truth behind the events of that night. Why did Ronald DeFeo murder his own family? Some say he was a psychopath. Others believe he did it for his father's insurance money. But in court, Ronald confessed that he heard voices from an evil spirit in his house, and it was those voices that compelled him to kill. Based on this, the court sentenced him to life imprisonment, where he passed away in 2021. After the horrifying events of 1974, the case faded from public memory within a few months. However, in 1975, when a new family moved into the Amityville house, the DeFeo family tragedy resurfaced in everyone's minds. That family was the Lutzes, George Lutz, his wife, Kathy, and their children. What they experienced in that house would send shivers down anyone's spine. From the moment the Lutz family entered the house, eerie things began to happen. As soon as they stepped inside, they were met with a foul, unbearable smell. They checked the entire house but couldn't find the source of the odor. Kathy believed it was because the house had been closed up for too long, so she cleaned every corner and sprayed air fresheners everywhere. But strangely enough, the smell wouldn't go away. There was no explanation for it. Now let me tell you something interesting. If a house is haunted by powerful spirits, it often emits an overwhelming, rotten odor. But the Lutz family tried their best to ignore it. They managed to get through the first night, but the next day, something even more unsettling happened. When George and Kathy stepped outside, they noticed it was a hot day, but inside the house they constantly felt freezing cold. They didn't pay much attention to it at first and continued with their day. But soon the memory of what had happened in the house the previous year, the murder of the DeFeo family, crept back into their minds. Could there be something more sinister at play in this house? To protect themselves from the evil spirits, the Lutz family called a priest from the nearby church. Father Ralph Pecoraro answered their call and came to the Amityville house. However, he couldn't control what was inside. The spirits of Amityville were so powerful that they overpowered a priest of the church itself. According to Father Pecoraro, he heard a mysterious, deep voice in the house, commanding him to leave immediately. Now, friends, it's possible that this was the same voice Ronald DeFeo heard when he claimed that the spirits ordered him to kill his family. But unlike DeFeo, the priest wasn't told to harm anyone. Instead, when Father Pecoraro ignored the voice and stayed inside for a longer period, an unseen force slapped him across the face, leaving blisters on his hands. As if that wasn't terrifying enough, a swarm of flies attacked him as well. Father Pecoraro warned the Lutz family to keep one particular bedroom upstairs locked at all times, claiming that this was where the evil spirit resided. He insisted that the room should remain closed forever. 3 days had passed since the Lutz family moved into the house, and the haunting presence inside became more active. Doors would open and close on their own, and the beds mysteriously moved from one spot to another without anyone touching them. The foul smell that had lingered earlier grew even stronger, coming in waves and then disappearing just as quickly. Footprints appeared on the carpets, and despite the family running the heater constantly, the house remained unnaturally cold. One day, while Kathy was cooking in the kitchen, she noticed her 3 children playing outside in the garden. But suddenly, she felt a strange sensation, like a child had rushed past her from behind. Meanwhile, their youngest daughter, Missy, frequently talked about her friend, Jody. She often claimed she was playing with Jody, even though there was no other child in the house. And in fact, no one lived anywhere near the Amityville area. At first, George and Kathy ignored Missy's stories about Jody. But when Missy kept mentioning Jody over and over again, they began to worry. Who or what was their daughter really playing with? George and Kathy Lutz found it very strange and told their daughter Missy that there was no girl named Jody, and they didn't understand who she was talking to. But then Missy insisted, saying, "Jody is real, and she spends most of her time with me." George and Kathy, confused and unable to comprehend, brushed it off, thinking that Missy, being only 4 years old and without anyone to play with, might have created an imaginary friend. But friends, Missy wasn't the only one seeing strange presences in the house. Her younger brother Daniel, the youngest in the family, also noticed something terrifying. One night, around 2 to 2:30 a.m., Daniel went to the bathroom. While washing his hands in the basin, he looked in the mirror and saw an unfamiliar man standing next to him. Terrified, he ran back to his room and fell asleep. The next morning, Daniel told his parents about the strange man he saw. As he described the figure, George and Kathy were shocked because it didn't resemble any human being. As days passed, more frightening events began to unfold. One of the scariest was George Lutz, waking up at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night. This was especially chilling because Ronald DeFeo had murdered his family at 3:15 a.m. in 1974. The Lutz family was so terrified by this that they couldn't even talk to anyone about it. Then something even stranger happened. A green slime-like substance started appearing on the walls and doorknobs of the house. It would materialize on its own and disappear just as mysteriously. According to the Lutz family, all 3 of their children would float in the air while they were sleeping, as if lifted by an invisible force. One night, Kathy Lutz herself transformed into what looked like a 90-year-old woman. When they looked out the window at night, they couldn't see anything clearly. But one night, a disturbing figure with red eyes, resembling a pig, was seen peeking into the house from one of the bedroom windows. By this point, the Lutz family had lived in the house for 27 days and had already decided that they needed to find a new place and leave Amityville. But on the night of the 28th day, everything escalated beyond their control. That night, the terror from the spirits reached such an extreme level that the family had no choice but to flee the house, leaving all their belongings behind. Friends, on that 28th night, George Lutz was awake, gripped by fear when things started happening right in front of his eyes. First, his wife, Kathy, who was lying next to him, fell off the bed. Then, to his horror, she began to float in the air right before him. After a while, George heard loud banging noises coming from his children's rooms. When he went to check, he saw an invisible force repeatedly lifting their beds into the air and slamming them onto the floor. George could sense a presence in the room, watching him intently, but no one was there. The night seemed endless, filled with terror. His 3 children ran into George and Kathy's room, telling them about the scary events they had witnessed, but they couldn't leave their rooms earlier. It was as if something had paralyzed them, making it impossible to move. The very next day, after 28 long days of enduring this haunting, the Lutz family fled the house. They left all their belongings behind, unable to take anything with them. Soon after, the terrifying stories of the Amityville house spread throughout the area. When paranormal experts, Ed and Lorraine Warren, heard about these incidents, they were called in to investigate. The Warrens were already renowned across the U.S. for their work on other haunted houses, including the one that inspired The Conjuring. If you've seen The Conjuring, you might be familiar with the Warrens' characters. When the Warrens arrived at Amityville, they immediately began their investigation. Some people had suspected that the Lutz family had created these stories to devalue the house, but the Warrens wanted to find the truth. They installed cameras in every room and captured many photographs. One of the most chilling photos showed a young boy standing by the stairs. Now you might wonder what's so terrifying about that. Well, this boy was the same one who had been murdered by Ronald DeFeo Jr. years earlier. This photo was solid proof that the Amityville house was indeed haunted, and the Lutz family wasn't lying. The Warrens later confirmed that the Lutz family didn't fabricate these stories for fame or money. In fact, the house was genuinely cursed by the spirits of those who had been killed there in 1974. Ed and Lorraine Warren even suggested that the house should never be sold or rented out again. Instead, it should be declared a restricted property due to the danger it posed. However, the New York authorities didn't take the Warrens' warnings seriously. They ignored the request to restrict the property, and it remained on the market. A few years later, after the Lutz family left in 1976, another family moved into the Amityville house. But believe it or not, they couldn't stay for more than 15 days. They too claimed to have seen the ghost of a young girl wandering throughout the house, along with other spirits. Since then, the house remained vacant for quite some time. But in 2023, a surprising piece of news emerged. A mysterious individual purchased the Amityville house for $1.46 million and is reportedly living there. However, this person has refused to give any media interviews. So, friends, what do you think? Has the house finally been cleansed of its ghosts? Or is there something more sinister going on? Could the new owner have a hidden motive? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, make sure to like the video and share it with your friends. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, bye.